Joining us from Capitol Hill is Democratic Senator Mark Warner of my home state of Virginia. He's one of the key architects of the FinReg bill. Senator Warner, welcome back to CNBC. It's great to see you again.
Thanks, Tyler.
I'd like to get your reaction to the idea that Congress, government more broadly speaking, is doing more harm than good with its legislation, with its rulemaking and so forth. We just had a guest on a couple of moments ago, and we'll get more into detail on financial reform in a moment, who called the bill 2,300 pages of nonsense. Now, I'm not sure that he really's read the bill or really knows that every page is filled with nonsense, but I do suspect that he's mirroring that sentiment that government does more harm than good. What do you say?
Well, listen, I think I understand why folks are frustrated. I mean, there's been a lot of extraordinary actions. I spent 20 years in business before I got this job, and I didn't fully appreciate how close we came in the fall of '08 and spring of '09 to a complete financial collapse. And I actually think history will treat both the TARP that under President Bush and the stimulus under President Obama both as kind of blunt objects, but both things that righted an otherwise shaky ship. You know, healthcare reform's got a lot of questions around it still that still remain to be answered. On financial reform, there's been no one that said we didn't need a new set of rules of the road for our financial markets, how we can make sure that we remain the financial capital for the world, but we don't have the kind of outrageous risk-taking that brought us to the brink, that precipice of 2008. And I think we've actually struck a good balance. I mean, this bill has got the benefit of being criticized by the left and some Democrats as having gone too far, and some Republicans as going too far. So, you know, we're getting it from both sides, and maybe that means we've kind of struck the right balance.
Let me just stay with a broader theme for a moment, sure, if you might indulge me. And that's the question. We just had a prior discussion about whether government and rulemaking and legislating, not to mention higher taxes, is actually the enemy of job growth and is sort of constipating the system so that companies will not spend the vast amounts of cash that they have on their balance sheets. Is that a fair point? Is government the enemy of business in this sense?
I don't think government is the enemy of business. I do think, you know, you got $2 trillion on corporate balance sheets. America's Fortune 500 companies are doing as well as they've done in recent past. I think there has been a lot of uncertainty that was mostly created by excesses in the financial markets. I think the fact that you've seen the financial sectors in the last 5 or 6 days actually respond favorably to the notion that we're going to get a bill, so we're going to clear up the uncertainty, is good news. I think the fact that we've started to take on the question of health care, which we've got to come back and deal with cost containment, is good news long term for our economy, because healthcare costs are what's driving up our cost overall. And to date, at least, one of the things I don't think most of your viewers would actually acknowledge, although it's factually true, you know, the stimulus was the third largest tax cut in American history.
Senator,
most folks didn't realize that, but that is the truth. You will see higher taxes coming out of healthcare in the next year or so, but so far, the only thing the Congress has done is actually lowered taxes in the short term.
Senator, right before we came on the air, Senator Grassley made news saying that he is not going to vote in favor of this particular piece of legislation. Apparently, his concerns have to do with the fact that, in his opinion anyway, the regulations on derivatives is not strong enough. Do you share any of those concerns? And what parts of the bill are harder for you to support, or have you worried?
Well, I think, again, you're making my point that I was making earlier. We have some saying the bill was not strong enough. We've had others saying the bill is too strong. So if you're getting it from both sides, maybe we've struck the right balance.
Well, but do you have concerns? Are there parts of the legislation you would like to?
There were concerns I had around derivatives to make sure that we didn't push all of the derivatives trading, frankly, into hedge funds and offshore. And I think we've struck some balance there, that we keep them within a bank, but they have to be separately funded in terms of capital reserve, and they have to be in another part of the bank holding company, not connected to the depository institution. I thought it was very important that we had the parts of the bill in terms of systemic risk and trying to make sure we've got a very rarely used resolution authority and one that favors bankruptcy. That was a section that Senator Corker, Republican senator, and I worked on together. It got 95 votes, that Titles I and Title II of the bill. So that part of the bill I felt was very strong.
Senator, the accomplishments have been incredible from this session of Congress, right? I mean, you've gotten health care reform done. You're on the verge of financial regulatory reform, a huge economic stimulus bill. You even reformed education funding. I mean, you'd have to go back to the 40s to see all of those achievements. I've asked many members of Congress this question. Why is it then that your approval ratings are sitting at the lowest level in 18 months? Why do you think the American public is unappreciative of all that you've done?
Because I think folks are pretty angry about the fact that the economy is in the worst recession since the Great Depression. and they're looking appropriately to say, how do we get ourselves? Americans have worked hard. They've seen their financial structure almost come to a collapse. They've seen taxpayers have to bail out large financial institutions, necessary but hard to explain. They see 9.5% unemployment 18 months in, and folks are saying, all right, when are we going to see the upside of this? And frankly, one of the things that I think people are still concerned about is a lot of the legislation that's passed, but there's been a lot of both misinformation, kind of overhyping or over-criticizing some of this legislation as it actually starts to get implemented. I think if you see job numbers pick up, and one of the things I've been working on right now is a very targeted small business lending program that could jumpstart small business lending, where we get 65% of the jobs coming out of recession, and it's kind of hung up on partisan politics that I frankly don't understand. We ought to be doing small business lending right now, because even though large cap markets have come back, small business lending still is pretty bad shape.
Senator Warner, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
Terrific.